So this is going to be like a very popular burger today. In and out, get in, do what we need to do, get out of here. AFC South divisional breakdown, talk a little Kirk Cousins, and anything else under the sun y'all want to get to, and then we'll get out of here. So the 281st installment of the Louie T Network podcast starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 281st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Protect your stuff out there, man. I'm going to say it. I've said it once. I'll say it again. And I'm going to continue to repeat myself over and over again because it is imperative this time of the season you look after your goods. The Reaper is out to task. We're already seeing some guys. It hasn't been terrible to start. You know, in past years, we've probably seen 4 or 5 guys gone, lost to ACL tears by now. So it's kind of good that we haven't gotten to that point yet. But the Denver Broncos just lost wide receiver Tim Patrick to an ACL tear. The Dallas Cowboys look like they're going to lose James Washington for the first portion of the season. Broken foot. He's out at least 2 months, could be a little bit longer. So again, and these are the big names, right? Washington just lost to a linebacker, undrafted, Drew White. I mean, there's probably a lot of those around the league, but talking about impactful guys that we know are making football teams that are expected to be contributors, just keep an eye on your stuff, man. You know, Irv Smith has to have hand surgery. They're hoping he's back for week 1. He's always dealing with something, it feels like, in Minnesota. You know, same thing can be said for Jamal Adams. He's dealing with a broken hand, but he can play through it. He's not, his craft isn't using his hands, you know, so he can put a cast on it and deal with that after the season, which is what he's going to attempt to try and do. But Irv Smith has to catch the football. He needs his hands, so they have to have that surgery. Van Jefferson is having surgery for the Rams, which opens the door for Odell Beckham Jr. to go back to the Rams. We'll see if that move is made or not. He's still a ways away from being ready to play football anyhow. But again, just keep an eye on your stuff. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I've been saying, and that's all I'm going to continue to say. That said, let's jump into today's show. You know what it is. You already know how we get the show kicked off. Don't act brand new. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get to thinking a little bit. So I'm going to tell you what. This division that we're breaking down today, the AFC South, they look like food to me. Okay. I'm just going to tell you right now, they look like one of the worst divisions in football. And if you're playing this division, and I think two of the divisions that will ultimately be better in the league this year in the NFC East, and yes, I'm a little biased, okay, and the AFC West, I think they're going to feast off of this division here and stockpiling number of wins. The reason you're going to see multiple double-digit win teams in each of those 2 divisions is because they're playing this division right here, and they're going to go ahead and get fat off of this division. I don't think this is a great division. I think that you have some young teams that are coming of age, but they're still a ways away, and I think the Titans took a step back. I honestly do. I don't love the Indianapolis Colts, but I like some of the aspects of their football team. So let's jump into this conversation surrounding this division and take a look at these schedules. We start with the AFC South champion Tennessee Titans. Remember, they were the number 1 seed last year. And here's the problem I have with what the Titans did this season. You don't get rid of AJ Brown. I get it. It's a money thing. You know, you couldn't see eye to eye on how much his worth was. He said he was willing to take less. They claim he wanted more. I don't know who to believe. It doesn't matter. He's no longer there. The bottom line is, if you're the Titans and you're hovering around 10 wins and you're not sure if you're close to taking that next step, yeah, go ahead and trade AJ Brown, because more likely than not, you know, Ryan Tannehill isn't the answer at the quarterback position anyway. So who gives a shit? You were the number 1 seed in the AFC last season. Okay. Home field advantage throughout in the conference. Just a mere 2 years prior to that, you were in the AFC Championship game. This is a team that is supposed to be ready to win now, and you're going to trade the best player on your team offensively for a rookie and expect him to come in and give you that same production and put you back in a position to compete at a high level in a ridiculously competitive AFC? I mean, what the hell are you thinking? Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the Titans schedule. We'll run through it quickly, and I'll give you the pocket of the schedule that I think is going to be important to their success. Giants week 1 at the crib, week 2 at Buffalo. That's a Monday night contest. Home for the the Raiders in week 3, at Indianapolis week 4, at Washington week 5. Then they hit an early season bye week in week 6. Come off the bye, home for Indianapolis in week 7, at Houston in week 8, at Kansas City in week 9 on a Sunday night, home for Denver in week 10, at Green Bay in week 11. That's a Thursday night football contest. Home for Cincinnati week 12, at Philadelphia week 13, home for Jacksonville week 14, at the Chargers week 15, home for Houston week 16, home for Dallas week 17. That is a Thursday night football contest week 17. And then finally, at Jacksonville week number 18. So this is a tough schedule, as you can see. You know, for me, even prior to the bye, your first 3 out of 5 games are on the road, okay? And those are tough environments, at Buffalo, at Indy. Washington isn't tough necessarily of an environment, but I think that's going to be a quality football team. We'll see. But I tell you this, you better beat the Giants in week 1 at home. Okay, you better take care of business there, because you're probably not going to beat Buffalo the following week on Monday Night Football. You don't want to start 0-2 on the season. So better take care of the Giants week 1 at the crib. And that could be a dangerous Giants team week 1 as well. But the part of the schedule that to me is going to help me determine what these Titans are, because they could get off to a great start to the season, but this is the meat and potatoes of their schedule. Week 9 through week 15 is when I'm going to find out what the Tennessee Titans are truly made of. At Kansas City week 9, that's a Sunday night. Home versus Denver. That's Russell Wilson. That's not Drew Lock. That's not Teddy Bridgewater. That's Russell Wilson, folks. Week 10 at the crib. At Green Bay, okay, week 11. That's the Thursday night football. So short turnaround after the Denver game. You got to go on the road to Lambeau to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers on a Thursday night. Home for Cincinnati, the team that put you out of the playoffs last season in week 12. That'll be a big matchup, you know, especially if both of these teams are good. At Philadelphia week 13, that's going to be a tough one there. Home for Jacksonville week 14, and then at the Chargers, a team that we think is going to be ready to compete for something meaningful this season in week 15. You're looking at a playoff team in 1, 2, 3, 4 of these games. 4 of these 2, 4, 6, 7 games. 4 out of the 7 games are against playoff teams from a season ago. And then I would throw in Denver and the Chargers as teams that we think could be playoff teams this year. So you're looking at a stretch there where you're playing 6 really tough, ball games essentially, and then family business against Jacksonville, which shouldn't be that easy either. So that's a tough stretch. The one thing I can say about the Titans in past years, which I can't co-sign for them this year, but in past years, they've been able to play against some of the best teams in football and win, be competitive and win. Last year, you could argue they played one of the toughest schedules in football. They went to LA and beat the Rams. They beat the Chiefs. They beat just about everybody. I mean, there was a checklist there of tough teams, and they said, hey, we beat them. We played them or we beat them. Played Cincinnati, played everybody. And unfortunately, they didn't get done in the postseason. I told you why I think they're going to take a step back. Yep, Derrick Henry's back. Yep, you got your offensive line, yada, yada, yada. A.J. Brown was such a huge part of their offense. They thought they were going to take the next step by bringing on Julio Jones last year. That was a disaster, but you still had A.J. Brown. Now you're swapping out A.J. Brown for a rookie. And, yeah, it's great that you got the receiver you got from the Rams, Robert Woods. That's awesome. But it doesn't make up for losing A.J. Brown. So I think Titans fans are saying, well, we swapped out A.J. Brown. We got the rookie Treylon Burks, and we got Robert Woods. You put those two together, they should give us the production of A.J. Brown and maybe then some. That may be true. I don't buy that for 1 second. I think you took a step back here. And so I got the Titans at 9-8 this season. Indianapolis Colts. Let's get to their schedule and what they're up to this season. At Houston, week 1, at Jacksonville, week 2, home for Kansas City, week 3, home for Tennessee, week 4, at Denver, week 5. That's a Thursday night football contest. Home for Jacksonville, week 6, at Tennessee, week 7, home for Washington, week 8, at New England, week 9, at the Raiders, week 10, home for Philadelphia week 11, home for Pittsburgh week 12. That's a Monday Night Football contest. The following week, you're at Dallas on a Sunday night. That is before your week 14 bye. So they're one of those teams with a very late bye in the season. Come off the bye, week 15 at Minnesota, home for the Chargers in week 16. That is a Monday Night Football contest. And then at the Giants week 17 and home for the Houston Texans in week 18. So the Indianapolis Colts are interesting because, you know, they put a lot of the blame on Carson Wentz as to why they didn't make the playoffs. They used him as a scapegoat, but this team last season wasn't a complete team. Their offense wasn't great. The pass protection up front wasn't great. The skill position wasn't great last year. They had a bunch of injuries. All they really had was Michael Pittman Jr., Nyheim Hines as a pass catcher, and then the tight ends. Like it wasn't a good offense, to be honest with you, other than Jonathan Taylor running the football. So they've done some things this year to try to fortify the receiving group. They lost Jack Doyle at the tight end position, but they feel good there. They got the Grandison kid in year 2. They think they're going to be fine there. They got Matt Ryan. So you swapped out Carson Wentz for Matt Ryan. I don't know if there's that much of a difference there or not. I can tell you this. Matt Ryan turns the football over a hell of a lot more than Carson Wentz does. Go look at the numbers from last year. Go watch the games from last year even. You know, and I commended Matt Ryan for, you know, doing what he did with what he had last year. There wasn't a lot in Atlanta last year. So he is accustomed to not having a lot around him and making the most of the situation. But in doing so, you're going to turn the football over. You're going to press a bit. And I can tell you, Falcons fans were ready to move on from Matt Ryan. I think the Colts fans are going to figure that shit out themselves, but let them figure that out themselves, okay? At the end of the day, the pocket of the schedule that I think – this is a tough schedule, you know, for Indianapolis. I think the pocket of the schedule that's the toughest is the first 10 weeks of the season, the first 10 games. I could have circled their entire schedule. It's just tough up and down, but the first 10 weeks, 6 of these games are on the road, okay? And of the first 10, you're playing a bunch of divisional games. So this is an important stretch of football. You start your first 2 games on the road against Houston and Jacksonville. Like, you have to win those games. The Colts haven't won in Jacksonville in like 6 years. So they have to find a way to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. And the Houston Texans, they're going to come out week 1 and they're going to feel like, why not us? Why can't we make a statement week 1? So 2 road games in the division. Then you get Kansas City at home, okay, after those 2 road games to start the season off in the division. And then Tennessee at the crib. But then you go to Denver on a Thursday night. Good luck with that one. Home for Jacksonville. This is your 3rd division game in the first 6, or excuse me, 4th division game in the first 6 weeks. Like, if you come out sluggish and slow, you could easily be 1-3 in the division in the first 6 weeks of the season. You play 4 division games in your first 6 weeks. Then you have at Tennessee. So this is your 5th division game in 7 weeks. Okay. 5 division games in the first 7 weeks. You don't play another divisional opponent until the final week of the season at home versus Houston. All of your division games essentially front loaded in the first 7 weeks. You've got 5 divisional games. It's the biggest stretch of football if you're Indianapolis. And then you got at New England and at Vegas, and you've got Washington at home. It's just about the importance of the games. 5 divisional games. You got to take care of business within the division. You're going to play everyone twice except Houston. You're going to play them week 18. You got to take care of business in these first 10 weeks. And we're going to find out who you are, because if you're good, if you want to win the division, you've got to sweep one of those 2 teams, Jacksonville or Houston, and then you have to split with that other team, and then you need to find a way to split with Tennessee, okay? 4-2 is the worst you can possibly do in the division and expect to win it. Really, you should be cleaning up the division, 5-1, 6-0, but 4-2 is adequate enough. But you're going to see 5 of your first 7 games are against divisional opponents. You're done with Tennessee by week 7. You're done with Jacksonville by week 6. Better find a way to get it done early in the season. You can't come out sluggish and slow. Your first 2 games are on the road in the division. Right after that, you go home. You're like, finally, we're home. It's Kansas City knocking on the door. Hey, who is it? Kansas City. Shit. So you better have your shit together right out of the gate if you're Indianapolis. I had the Indianapolis Colts at 9-8. I have them at 9-8. I had them at 9-7-1 with the tie, and that would have given them the division crown. But in typical Frank Wright fashion, like he did some 3-4 years ago, where he decided we don't play for ties, so he put his team in a compromising position to lose the game. I think he's going to do that dumb shit again. They're going to lose the game that could have been a tie, and that would have ultimately given them the division crown. Instead, they're going to finish 9-8 and finish behind the Tennessee Titans and miss the playoffs yet again. Houston, let's go to the Texans. This is a team, they pretty much turned over the entire roster the last 2 years. New GM they hired last year. They fired their head coach David Culley after 1 year. I thought that was a travesty. Hire Lovie Smith. I actually thought they had a strong, early portion of their draft. I'm intrigued to see what they look like. They're putting some of their eggs, not all, but some of their eggs, more eggs in the Davis Mills basket. I'm anxious to see how that goes. Let's go through their schedule quickly. Home for Indianapolis, at Denver in week 2, at Chicago in week 3, home for the Chargers in week 4, at Jacksonville week 5, early season week 6 bye. You come off that bye, you're at Vegas in week 7, home for the Titans in week 8, home for the Eagles in week 9. That's a Thursday night game, the only primetime game the Texans have in 2022. At the Giants in week 10, home for Washington in week 11, at Miami in week 12, home for Cleveland in week 13, at Dallas in week 14, home for Kansas City in week 15, at Tennessee in week 16, home for Jacksonville week 17, at Indianapolis week 18. So you can see they have that home away thing going on their schedule after week number 8. So the Texans, I've said this a ton. I'm going to say it more. Teams that are young, that are looking to win, that are in search of confidence, you need to get off to a fast start. So the first 7 weeks, which features 6 games, obviously they have the week 6 bye week. That's where you got to focus in your attention if you're Houston, because if you get off to a slow start, by the time you get to week 10, 11, your season's already over, and now you're evaluating players, and you just don't want to be in that position. So I think it is imperative to get off to a fast start, and it's going to be tough because 4 of your 6 games to start the season off are on the road. Okay, so home for Indy week 1, at Denver week 2, at Chicago week 3. That's a winnable game, but the Bears are saying the exact same thing, right? That's a very winnable game. We got to find a way to beat Houston at the crib. At home versus the Chargers in week 4, at Jacksonville week 5. You come off your bye week in week 6, and you play at Vegas. So you got to find a way to navigate your first 6. If you can come out of that stretch at 500, 3-3, you got to feel good about that. And it propels you into the rest of your schedule. If you come out of that thing 2-4, 1-5, 0-6, you're probably dead in the water. 2-4, not so much, but anything less than that, 1-5, 0-6, obviously your season's done, right? So 2-4 gives you a fighting chance. I don't know how long that flickering flame stays alive, because you go home for Tennessee, home for Philadelphia on a Thursday night, and then at the Giants. So you would have to get one of those on the at home, right? But at the end of the day, the start to the season is going to determine how much energy, how much confidence these young players are going to be playing with. So I think that's the stretch of football. I got the Texans at 5-12. Again, this is not a great division. This is a young team. They were one of the worst in football last year. I think, they're going to be in the same predicament this year. They're still growing, a lot of moving parts. They're still turning the roster over. I see the Texans being a 5-win ball club. And then you get to the Jacksonville Jaguars for the final team in this division. And this is a team that is a chic pick by a lot of people to be one of the most improved teams in football. I myself am not buying that. I do think they're going to be vastly improved. I mean, they can't be any worse than they were under Herb last year, which we later found out that was a train wreck. The fact that he was just so clueless and he was not a leader of men. I mean, it all makes sense when you look at the programs that he had it and all the shit that was happening in Florida with all the guys smoking weed in the program, having so many, different things happen under his watch. And then having the guy that was a woman beater that was beating his wife and that was on his staff in Ohio State and that he was protecting. All of this shit makes sense, right? Anyway, having Doug Peterson come in there as Super Bowl winning head coach, you think, and Trevor Lawrence and all the talent, getting Travis Etienne back, they should be a much better team, much better coached, obviously. So I do think that Jacksonville will be improved, but how much? Let's talk about it. At Washington week 1, home for the Indianapolis Colts week 2, at the Chargers week 3, at Philadelphia week 4, home for Houston week 5, at Indy week 6, home for the Giants week 7, home for Denver. It's not really a home game. It's over in London, but they're going to have more fans there than the Denver Broncos will. That's in week 8. Home for the Raiders in week 9, at the Chiefs week 10. That's right before their week 11 bye. They come out of that bye. Home for Baltimore week 12, at Detroit week 13, at Tennessee week 14, home for Dallas week 15, at the Jets week 16, at Houston week 17, home for the Titans week 18. For me, there's so many road games in a concentrated area in pockets of this schedule. The back end of the schedule. Let's say that the Jaguars are playing, hovering right around 500, maybe just south of 500 towards the back end of the schedule, like 5-7 going into their final 5 games. And then you get to those final 6 games. So let's say they're, 5-6 heading into their final 6 games. 4 out of their final 6 are on the road. I can say the same thing about the start to the season. 4 of your first 6 are on the road. So it's those pockets of the schedule that are going to be really interesting to see how a young football team like Jacksonville navigates. Because when they play their best football, usually it's at home. When they upset someone like they did Buffalo last year, it's usually at home. They had a chance to beat Indianapolis on the road. They didn't get it done, but then they did beat them in week, 18 last year. So when they find ways to beat teams, when they're ultra competitive and they win, it's usually at the crib. They're playing a lot of road games. We'll see what happens. But I say the first 6 games. I've said the same thing about Houston. I always say this about young football teams. You have to get off to a fast start if you want to build that confidence. You don't want your young team saying, here we go again. You take a lead, then that team storms back, scores 17 unanswered, and now they're saying, here we go again, woe is me, and you ultimately lose the game going away. You want them to be able to fight. You want them to say, hey, we were down 14, at Los Angeles versus the Chargers, and we rallied back and won that game. We can win games. Like, you want them to have that confidence instilled in them. It's going to be tough. 4 out of your first 6 are on the road. At Washington week 1, home for the Colts in week 2, at the Chargers in week 3, at Philadelphia week 4, home for Houston, and then at Indy. And then I talked about 4 out of the 6 being on the road. 3 of those 6 games are against divisional opponents. So you're going to get a taste of every single team, you're going to get a taste of divisional play early on in the season. You're done with the Indianapolis Colts by week 6. You would have played them twice already, okay? So it's important that you get off to a fast start, and that's also going to coincide with how fast of a start you get off to in the division. So I look at Jacksonville. I'm intrigued by the Jaguars. I think the world of Trevor Lawrence. I think that getting Travis Etienne is going to make a difference. They added Christian Kirk. They added Evan Ingram. I think that offense has a chance to really be dynamic. I see them as a 6-win team, 6-11 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I wouldn't be shocked if they won 7 games. 8 is pushing it for me. 7-10 is the best I could see them doing. I started at 7-10, but again, they're food. That whole division is food. And so if they're food, they can't be 7 wins. 6 wins for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is what I see from that entire division. I got the Titans winning the division ultimately at 9-8. So let's get to the next segment of the show, and that is social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. We'll go through this real quick. As I mentioned, this is going to be an in and out show. You guys know how this works. For those of you who don't, simply use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent. We'll get to as many as we can in the amount of time that we have. If you want to jump to the front of the line, the best way to do that is via the super chat. So with that said, I got a couple of super chats here. I'll knock those out. Both of them are actually from my guy, the Cubo. And you know what? I've been meaning to get to your content, bro. I saw your draft. I started your draft content. And I want to go through all of it in sequential order. It's just good to see you back behind the camera, man, honestly. So if you haven't already done so, check my guy, the Cubone, out. Jacksonville Jaguars fan, does a great job, and I can't wait to, really sit down and dive into all of your content. The Cubone writes, Duval, he said, we're coming for that week 1 victory, Lou. I know you guys feel like you are, and we feel the same way. Like, yeah, we got to eat in week 1. You can't afford to lose to Jacksonville. That's the chic pick. Vegas has us losing that game as well. That's a chic pick. Jacksonville coming into Washington, beating the Commanders. It's hard for me to stomach you guys coming into our building week 1 with all of the hoopla surrounding this team, new name, new uniforms, new field in terms of the way it looks, new energy. You got to find a way to win your first game of your new history. The new name, everything's going to be new. You got to find a way to win that game. Can't screw that up. Got to find a way to get it done. I treat that game similar to when Ron Rivera's first game of being the head coach was like, yeah, we got to win that first game for Ron. I think we got to win that game. But if you're a Jaguars fan, you should think you're coming into Washington and winning that game. You should. And if you're a Washington fan, you should think you're going to beat Jacksonville. That's why I said we look at them like food. They're looking at us like food. Same thing in week 2 against Detroit. They're looking at us like food. We're looking at them like food. Somebody's going to eat. I hope we're doing all of the eating, man. That's all I can hope for. The Cubone, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Cubone, my guy. Q writes, I'll be at that Kansas City for week 10 when they play Jacksonville. So excited. I know that's right up in your neck of the woods, being from Missouri. So that should be fun for you. I don't know if you'll be happy about the outcome of that football game. We'll see. That could actually turn into a really good game, depending on the level of confidence the Jaguars are playing with at that time of the season. Again, this is why it's important that you get up to a fast start, because by the time you get to week 10 at Kansas City, you could already be, 2-7. You could already be 1-8, and your season could be already down the drain. And so all of a sudden, you don't know what Jacksonville team is showing up. The one that wants to get a mud hole stomped in them 41-10, or the team that's like, yo, let's go into Kansas City and make some noise. And all of a sudden you end up getting a 31-27 football game. Even if it's a loss, that's still entertaining. That's fun to watch. So we'll see. I hope you have fun at that game. Let's see. Hashtag here from Protect Sports Network. My guy Tones was good. Writes, Louie T, what's good? What's good with you? Tones, he says, the Reaper is out here. It is. The Reaper's out to task. Protect your stuff. I said that at the top of the show. You guys know what it is. Watch your stuff. I mean, treat it like you're letting your little kid, your 3-year-old go outside in the front yard and play. You don't have a gate, right? So you're not comfortable just going in the house and letting them play in the front yard. You're going to be keeping a very watchful eye on that 3-year-old. Hell, you're not even sitting down. Like, kind of everywhere he or she is running, you're right behind them, because you don't want them running into the street, or you don't want them running too far down the road. That's kind of how you need to keep your eyes on your stuff right now. Reaper's out here, man. All right. Just watch your stuff. HHC Lunar, thank you for the super chat, or writes, this Deshaun Watson situation is just ridiculous at this point. Going to be Deflategate 2.0. I mean, the ruling has been made. It is what it is. At this point, I mean, his camp wanted no suspension. The NFL wanted a year-long suspension, but they were willing to settle for 12. Ultimately, the ruling was 6. I mean, what are you going to do? So it is what it is. I mean, it's one of those situations. They really didn't have much to stand on in terms of a suspension, but they couldn't just let him go free. I mean, there are people that are really pissed off that he got 6 games. They're hot, like the NFL, this is a joke, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, you couldn't appease. Everyone wasn't going to be happy with the verdict here. But the truth be told, from a criminal standpoint, that the things that are actually in the NFL bylaws, okay, the NFL handbook for code and a code of conduct, he didn't violate really anything, technically speaking. All right. Now, it's almost like the eye test. Technically, you look at a guy, you say, hey, he passes the eyeball test, but you're watching him and you're like, he's not it. even though he checks off all the boxes from the eyeball test. He's 6'5", he's 260, physical at the tight end position. But you're watching him and you're like, yeah, but he's stiff. He doesn't have the fluidity that you would want him to have. That's the same thing with this situation. Like, technically speaking, yeah, looking at everything from the surface level, he didn't really do anything wrong. Like he didn't break any laws. You don't have a real leg to stand on, but we're watching the situation like, bro, come on now. 66 different masseuses. He's handled over 30, cases, in civil court. He's settled with them. Like, come on, bro. Like, there's an issue here. So it is what it is. Jonathan Hankey writes, how's it going, Louie? What's going on with you? He says, hope you and your family are doing well. Likewise, Jonathan. He says, I do really feel good about my Colts this year. However, I'm still impatiently waiting for a cornerback getting us a young QB, CB, getting us a quarterback. So their general manager, essentially, Chris Ballard, getting them a young quarterback. That's the problem. Is Chris? He's trying to preserve his job. When he took the job, there was Andrew Luck. He didn't think he would have to do this. And since Andrew has departed, he's been afraid to pull the trigger on a first-round quarterback. And he told you why. He was up front with you guys. He's like, the minute I draft a first-round quarterback and he doesn't work out, that's the minute you guys turn on me and run me out of town. So he's pretty much bitched up the last 5 years or so since Andrew Luck, and he's continued to find stopgaps, veterans. He thought Wentz was going to be the answer. And I honestly feel like had it not been pressure from Jim Irsay, Wentz would still be there. Because I know Frank Wright, without a doubt, wasn't ready to give up on Carson Wentz. I don't think Chris Ballard felt like, Carson Wentz was public enemy number one. But Irsay did, and in order to keep your job, the guy that signs your check wants this guy gone. You got to be on board with what he's talking about, so you do whatever he tells you to do. And so Ballard has been running from the elephant in the room. You need a young quarterback. It's enough of the Sam Ellingers and the Jacob Easons. Enough of that shit. Okay, draft a young guy that you can actually put on the football field and see what happens. He's been scared because you keep winning 8, 9, 10 games every year, which puts you in the middle of the first round and not in a position to get one of these high-level quarterbacks. At some point, either you spend the draft capital to move up and get a guy, or you take somebody. But you got to stop this 3rd, 4th round shit because it's not going to happen. So I'm right there with you. I like some of the moves the Colts made this offseason, edge rusher wise, bringing in Yannick Ngakoue, cornerback wise, bringing in Stephon Gilmore. Like there's some things to be excited about. I still am not sold on the offensive side of football. I've heard good things about Alec Pierce out there. We'll see what he's able to do for that offense. I still don't buy the offense as a whole, and Jonathan Taylor was awesome last year, and we'll see if he can duplicate that again. I still have issues and qualms about the offensive line. We'll see. You drafted an offensive lineman this year that you think is going to come in and maybe solidify your offensive line and the tackle position in particular. We'll see what happens. Rich says, as a Commanders fan, I'm hoping Watson is out for the year so we don't have to play his ass, but I also like the guy and I think he should play. The NFL going to say bye to his season though. Like I said, 6 games is what was rendered down in terms of a suspension already. And the NFL really can't do anything about it. That's what it is. It's 6 games. Okay. Independent arbitrator ruled that what his actions were worthy of a 6-game suspension. NFL wanted a full year, but they were like, we're willing to settle for 12. They got 6. Deshaun Watson's camp, they wanted 0 games, and they said, we're willing to be anywhere from 6 to 8. No more than that. They got 6. That's what it is. So let's see. I got a super chat here. Let me take that real quick. Got a super chat here from Matthew Stansberry. It's been a while, Matthew. Good to hear from you. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, thanks for the Colts breakdown. Keep up the great work. Appreciate you, Matthew. I really think that the Colts are an intriguing team. The division is there for them to take if they want it, to be honest with you. The division is there because I think Tennessee's taking a step back this year. So I think 10 games will get it done in that division. If you want it, there it is. Go get 10 wins and go get the division. So we'll see what happens. James Johnson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy James writes, what up, Lou? What's up, James? Says, just showing some love. Have to catch this one on playback. New dad on baby duties. Mela Johnson, 722. Oh, that is beautiful. Congratulations to you and your significant other on the birth of a beautiful baby girl. It is nothing like it. Day before my birthday, so I'm already loving the fact that your daughter is technically she's a Cancer. I welcome her to the Leo family. I will extend that to her. But that's a beautiful thing, man. Daddy duties are real, and you're gonna fall in love. If this is your first, you're gonna fall in love. And you know how females are, you know how girls are. They tug on our heartstrings, man. Congratulations, and this will definitely be here for you on playback. Thank you, James, and once again, congratulations to you and yours. I'll take a couple more hashtags and we will get out of here. I think I was here with Jonathan, who writes, if my Colts are serious making it to the playoffs, they got to take care of business, not only in my division, but against very tough division, that being the AFC West. Absolutely. I mean, you're going to have to find a way to win some games. It's not going to be easy, but if you want to win your division, which is what I think it is within reach, I got you and the Titans both winning 9 games this season. You can go 10-7, you can go 11-6. You know what I'm saying? There are games there to be won. You just got to go out and get them. And it's not going to be easy. Again, you play, I think, some tough divisions in the NFC East. I think the NFC East is going to be good this year. I think the AFC West is the best football division that we've seen probably in the last 7-10 years, maybe. I think it's going to be that competitive. We've seen some really good divisions over the years. This has a chance to be one of the best. So good luck. You're going to need it. That is for sure. Loser, the Redskins fan, writes, I think people are sleeping on the Commanders' cornerback depth. Johnson showed flashes last year when he was on the field, as well as Elder. Also, as a fan of the signing we made with the cornerback, Devontae Busby. We'll see. I mean, I think there's a reasonable, amount of fans sleeping on the cornerback position, and rightfully so, because the depth of that position is one that should come into question. I don't think it's something that you should just blindly say, oh, we're fine. We signed all these guys that haven't done it at this level before, but we should feel good. I need to see it. I think that's where a lot of fans are at the cornerback position, but we'll see what happens. Kevin, the PRF says, looks like part of the Wentz deal was Indy taking our normal yearly schedule. It's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. It's going to be tough. Jonathan Hankey writes, also, Louie, I don't blame Wentz for the loss against the Jags. That was a team loss, which was embarrassing as a Colts fan, shaking my head. I think most educated, sensical Colts fans understand that, hey, that's just been a house of horrors for you in Jacksonville, and family business is family business. We may, from the outside looking in, be able to say it's Jacksonville. They should be able to beat a Jacksonville Jaguars team that's not playing for anything in week 18. Yeah, that sounds good in theory, but when it's family business, none of that shit matters. It doesn't make any sense to people that aren't a part of your family. But if you know that they struggle with the Jaguars in Jacksonville for some reason, just like for whatever reason, New England struggles with Miami in Miami for whatever reason. Doesn't matter how bad the Dolphins are when they go to Miami, especially late in the season, for whatever reason, the Patriots, no matter how good they are, they struggle to beat the Dolphins. That's family business. And not everybody gets it. And so, yeah, it was an embarrassing loss, but it's not one that you haven't had before. Jacksonville won one game in 2020, and the one game was beating the Indianapolis Colts in week 1. Okay. So, it's just the thing, right? But at the same time, a lot of people wanted to blame, Carson Wentz. All the people that are Carson Wentz haters and detractors, they blame him for that loss. Like the rest of the team didn't, lay an egg. But that's low-hanging fruit. If you watch the game or if you know what's going on, then you know that wasn't just a Carson Wentz loss. No, he was not great in that game, but the entire team wasn't great in that game. So I know a lot of Colts fans get that. I've talked to many Colts fans, and a lot of them get it. Right. A lot of them get it. Thank you for that, Jonathan. And let's see. Little Miss Perry, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, the league is appealing the 6-game suspension. It's looking like Watson will be gone for more than 6 games now. I'll believe it when I see it. The league can appeal all they want. Because clearly that's not what they want. They don't want 6. I told you the league was like, we want at a bare minimum 12. That was the number that they were targeting. They really wanted a full season, right? But the arbitrator has already decided that 6 is the number. Watson and his camp are going to essentially say, look, we had an owner who is supposed to be held to a higher standard, not be suspended at all for similar behavior. Now, I get it. His wasn't 66 different masseuses and it wasn't all of these different civil suits. Still, that's, again, to me, a conflict of interest. You got an owner that he got a slap on the wrist, if even that. And then furthermore, you look in the NFL bylaws, as I mentioned, in their code of conduct policy, and he actually has done nothing wrong. I just don't know how the NFL wins this. This isn't back in the day where Roger Goodell could say, you know what, I want you to be gone the whole year, and that's that. He's no longer the judge, jury, and executioner, and I just don't see how it gets to, I don't think he's going to have the power necessary to push this thing out to, 12 games like the league wants. I think 6, maybe 8, if anything. I just don't see how it changes. We'll see what happens, though. James Johnson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, thanks, Lou, and everyone else from Team Johnson. He says, fatherhood is amazing. My mom was a Leo, so that's cool with me. And I know it was mom because he put that there in another super chat. Thank you for that, James Johnson. Really appreciate you there. I'm so happy for you, man. New life is always a blessing. It's like this bright, luminescent light that just shines on your family. And I'm still, my twins are 8 months, going to be 8 months here in a few days, and I'm still glowing right now. Like, it's just a blessing, man. So, congratulations once again. Enjoy it, soak it up, and Leos rock. So your mom is probably awesome because she's a Leo. So that is awesome. I was asking the same question too, Mike Smith. Is that Condo P? I'm thinking it's Condo P. Honestly speaking, I think it's Condo P. She'll switch the name up on us real quick. So I think it's Condo P, but we'll have to figure that one out. Anyway, let's transition to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So, you know what? There are times, there aren't many things that surprise me as a fan of football because I've watched it. I follow it so closely. I live, eat, breathe, sleep NFL football. All 32 teams, you guys know that. So there aren't many things that surprise me, but there are things that I am fascinated by. This situation here with Kirk Cousins, I am fascinated by because Kirk Cousins is a thug. Kirk Cousins is a savage. Kirk Cousins is a thug savage, okay? A savage thug. So it all makes sense to me now because you guys go back in the archives, right? Go watch the podcast after that week, I think 4 game against Detroit. when they had to come from behind victory, Kirk takes them down the field, gets them in the field goal range. The kicker drills like a 55-yarder. They win. And remember, I told you how awkward of an exchange it was between Kirk. I was like, maybe they were just that excited because Kirk screamed in his face, grabbed him, screamed in his face, and Mike Zimmer grabbed him, and the push from Mike Zimmer was so violent. I was like, damn, were you that excited that you pushed him? He pushed him like he wanted to punch him in his shit, right? But I was like, maybe they were just excited. Maybe that was their way of showing their jubilation at the situation. No, he really wanted to punch Kirk Cousins in the face. And Kirk said some very flagrant shit. Okay. Kirk was out of pocket. He is such a savage thug for this. And you know what? There was already animosity bubbling beneath the surface between the two of them because Mike Zimmer wanted Kirk Cousins to get the vaccine. He didn't get the vaccine. And that was an issue. That was a big wedge between the two of them because we saw teams have issues with their starting quarterback, i.e. Indianapolis last year with Carson Wentz not getting the vaccine and having to miss a week of practice and, really being in a compromising position. We saw teams struggle with that. The Denver Broncos, they're the poster child for, not having your quarterback be vaccinated or, having their whole room wiped out essentially and having to start a practice squad wide receiver who used to play quarterback in college in Hinton play in an NFL game. It's crazy, right? So listen to this. This is from Mike Zimmer talking about the Lions game and the incident that occurred after the Lions game, right? Listen to this. Listen to how savage of a thug Kirk Cousins is, right? This is from Mike Zimmer. He says, tensions had been rising between Kirk and myself after the loss to the Browns. I told him face to face he needs to be better. Kirk didn't say a word to me the whole week going into the game versus Detroit. Skip ahead to that last drive, and Kirk comes right up to me. He said, right next up to me as Greg is getting ready to kick it. Greg nails the kick, and we win the game, and then Kirk turns and grabs me and says, you effing like that. I just saved your job. Hold on. Let me say that again. Kirk grabs him, again, aggressively. I told you how awkward this exchange. Go back and watch the podcast after that game, and I told you how awkward of an exchange that was. And I didn't know at the time that there was a backstory to it. Now it makes all the sense in the world. Sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. And so he says, Kirk grabs him and says, you effing like that. I just saved your job. He said, I was ready to punch him in that moment. First of all, Mike Zimmer is not the one, right? Zimmer, he's not the one, okay? There are certain coaches in this league that are B words. Mike Zimmer's not one of them, right? Which is why he grabbed him the way he did, because you should have seen the way he pushed him. He pushed him like he wanted to punch him. He said, which he did, you can see. He said, I was ready to punch him in that moment. Instead, I pushed him off of me. That was my breaking point with Kirk right there. So, wow. Wow. That is some juicy, salacious stuff. I mean, obviously it doesn't matter now. Mike Zimmer's no longer there. Kirk Cousins is still in Minnesota, but it just lends a different perspective into what was going on in Minnesota all last year. There was tension between head coach and quarterback all season long. I think it stemmed from, the whole ordeal because Mike Zimmer was publicly criticizing Kirk Cousins and any other quarterback around the league or players for that matter who didn't want to get the vaccine. And Kirk probably took umbrage to that. They got off to a slow start. Then Zimmer comes to him and says, bro, you got to be better. This shit is not good enough. And I remember that Browns game. It was a low-scoring game, something like 13-12, some bullshit like that. They ultimately lost that game. And he probably told him, you got to be better, man. Like, this isn't good enough. And so Kirk probably took offense to that. And Kirk's always had a chip on his shoulder ever since he was drafted. Obviously that's where the "you like that" came from when he was in Washington. So he's always had a chip on his shoulder. And he probably was like, all right, I'm going to show his ass. And he drove him down the field, got him in the field goal range. And their kicker bangs it from 55 or so. And now he lets it all out. That's what Kirk does. He has all that pent up aggression and emotion, then he lets that shit out. And he unloaded on him, told him, hey, I just saved, he said, you effing like that, I just saved your job. Ouch, that's a low blow. Bro, he just broke the bro code. Ouch. That's a no-no. You just broke the bro code. Ouch. Kudos and props to Mike Zimmer for keeping his cool in that moment, because that easily could have been a punch or a smush in the face. But as a coach, you got to hold your cool. That's why he pushed him the way that he did. Yikes. Kirk Cousins, who knew Kirk Cousins was a thug? Who knew he was a savage? Who knew Kirk had that inner beast in him? Kirk Cousins, my goodness. Anyway, I digress. All I'm gonna say is, you like that? I don't know. Do you? Kirk Cousins is about that life. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 281st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I enjoyed this podcast. I hope you did the same. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys in the near future. I'm hoping to have one more episode of the podcast this week, but there's no guarantee as to whether I will or not. Stay tuned for that. I will, however, have a podcast or a Washington show tomorrow night. The Hall of Fame game is also tomorrow night, but again, that's going to be trash. I'll probably watch the first hour of it and then turn it off, because I will have a show, and that's not going to stop me from watching, doing my show, that the Hall of Fame game is taking place. So, but we will have football. So I'll try to be here on Friday, but I can't make you any promises. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Hopefully we will knock it out Friday so that we can take care of our last final division, the NFC South. So I'll see what happens there. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. Until next time, you know what it is. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man Louie T. Take care of yourselves, your family, and all of your loved ones. Until next time, you guys take care. God bless, and good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.